So today I'm going to teach you a new and super simple way to create triple layer cards. It is a total game changer. Hi, it's Lynn Dunn from Stamptastic Designs. Thanks so much for joining me today. In this episode of Stamptastic TV, you will learn how to make triple layer cards the easy way. I will show you 3 different ways you can use the rectangular stitched framelit dies to easily create some 3-layered masculine themed cards. No more cutting or stamping over multiple pieces of cardstock to create these layers. These die cuts are an absolute game changer when it comes to creating a triple layer card. By the end of this video, you will have 3 easy masculine cards to make and some simple ways to use the framelit dies to create a 3-layered card. For the latest card making ideas, be sure to subscribe to my channel and click on that little bell so you will be notified each time I upload a new video. Now, this layering technique is not new. However, what I'm about to show you today will take triple layer cards to a whole new level, a much easier level. So give me a thumbs up if you are ready to take your card making to a whole new level. Okay, first let's talk about the supplies I used to create these cards. So you will need some black, gray, and tranquil tide colored cardstock for the base of your cards and for all of the accent pieces. Next, you will need some different patterns of paper from the Classic Garage Designer Series paper pack. And this sheet of paper in particular will be used to create some of the different accent pieces on the card. So you can cut out these little car shapes to accent the card. Now, the most important item that you need are these rectangular stitched framelits. This is what's going to be the game changer. These are going to make creating these cards so simple. We will be using 4 different sized rectangular dies to create the layers on these cards. 2 of the rectangular shapes, the smaller ones, will be used to cut out the stamped images or the designer paper. The other 2 rectangular shapes will serve as a mat for our stamped images or for our pattern paper. However, if you don't have the dies or you want to cut the layers for these cards with your paper trimmer, then you should certainly watch my other triple layer card video. You can click on the link at the top of your screen. Now, since we are making masculine themed cards, I am going to be using the Geared Up Garage stamp set. So this stamp set has some fun images to create masculine cards. And of course you will need some ink. So for these 3 cards, I am using a couple of different colors. Tranquil Tide, Cherry Cobbler, Basic Gray, and some black ink. Now keep in mind that you can create triple layered cards with any stamp set or pattern papers that you have on hand. Yes, you can create cards for any occasion, not just masculine cards. All right, so let's get started. Card number 1, the basic triple layer card. So we will start with what I like to call the basic triple layer card design. So what we're going to do is we're going to be creating our own pattern paper or our own background for this card. And then we're going to take this design and we're going to modify it slightly to create the other 2 cards. So for this card, start with a piece of basic gray cardstock cut to 5.5 by 8.5 inches. Score the 8.5 inch side at 4.25 inches to create the base of your card. Next, cut a 5.25 by 4 inch piece of one of the yellow pattern papers from the Classic Garage Designer Series paper pack. You can also use regular cardstock, such as crushed curie, instead of pattern paper. We will start by randomly stamping a variety of images from the Geared Up Garage stamp set across this paper. So first, let's start with the image that looks like an oil spill. Randomly stamp it across the paper using basic gray ink. Next, ink up the gas can image using cherry cobbler ink and randomly stamp that across the paper. And finally, stamp the nut images on the paper using Tranquil Tide ink. Now let's create the layers. So I will be using 2 different rectangular stitched framelit dies to cut out the stamped paper. The size of the rectangular die cuts measure approximately 1 3/4 by 3.25 inches and 3 by 4 3/8 inches. Simply lay the die cuts on the paper with your stamped images and then run them through the embossing machine. Save all the pieces as they will be used to create different layers on the card. Now the other two layers, which are the mats for our stamped images, are created with the rectangular stitched framelit dies that are just one size bigger. So that means the first mat will be approximately 2¼ by 3½ inches. And the other mat will be approximately 3 3/8 by 4 3/4 inches. Now you will cut these rectangular shapes from a piece of gray cardstock. So now you will have 3 rectangular pieces of paper with your stamped images, 2 that look like a frame, and 1 solid piece. And you should also have 2 rectangular pieces of gray cardstock, and of course your gray card base. So we're going to start by adhering the largest rectangular framed shape to your card front. Next, adhere the medium rectangular frame with the stamped images to the coordinating medium piece of gray cardstock. Adhere this matted piece to the center of your card front. Now be sure to line up the stamped images on this piece with the stamped images on your card front. Next, adhere the smallest rectangular shape with the stamped images to the coordinating piece of gray cardstock that you have left. Go ahead and adhere this matted piece to the center of your card front. Again, be sure to line up the stamped images before you adhere it. Now for the finishing touch, simply embellish the card with a little greeting and one of those black car images. Now if you have created a triple layer card before, then you know how long it takes to cut out all of the layers and then try to stamp your images over all of those layers. So by using these rectangular framelit dies, you can just stamp your images on one piece of paper. You do not need multiple layers. And then you can just cut out all the different layers, all the different rectangular shapes with your framelit dies. It makes it so much easier to create this. So what do you think? Drop me a comment below or type game changer if you think these dies are just absolutely perfect for creating triple layer cards. Card number 2, the triple layer card with pattern paper. So for this card, I will use the exact same triple layer card design that I just shared. However, this time I will use some of my pattern paper instead of stamping images. So for this card, start with a piece of tranquil tide cardstock cut at 5½ by 8½ inches. Score the 8½ inch side at 4¼ inches to create the base of your card. Next, cut a 5¼ by 4 inch piece of one of the pattern papers from the Classic Garage Designer Series paper pack. Now let's create the layers. So I am using the same rectangular stitched framelit dies to cut out the pattern paper. Simply lay the die cuts on the pattern paper and run them through your embossing machine. Save all the pieces as they will be used to create the different layers on the card. Now cut the other 2 layers, which are the mats for this pattern paper. Now you will cut these rectangular shapes from a piece of tranquil tide cardstock. So you will have 3 rectangular pieces of pattern paper, 2 that look like a frame and 1 solid piece, and then you should also have 2 rectangular pieces of tranquil tide cardstock, and of course your tranquil tide card base. So again, you're going to start by adhering the largest rectangular frame to your card front. Next, adhere the medium rectangular frame with your pattern paper to the coordinating medium piece of tranquil tide cardstock. Adhere this matted piece to the center of your card front and be sure to line up the images before adhering. Next, adhere the smallest rectangular shape with the pattern paper to the coordinating piece of tranquil tide cardstock. Go ahead and adhere this matted piece to the center of your card front. Again, be sure to line up the images before adhering. For the finishing touch, simply embellish the card with a greeting and another car image. Now this design is similar to the first card, but we changed the look of it just a bit by using pattern paper instead of stamping our images in the background. Card number 3, the 2-panel layered card. So the last card I have to share is a 2-panel card using the triple layer technique. It's the same concept as the last 2 cards, but we are just creating 2 smaller panels that will lay side by side instead of layering them on top of each other. So for this card, we will start with a piece of black cardstock cut at 5½ by 8½ inches. Score the 8½ inch side at 4¼ inches to create the base of your card. cut a 5 1/4 by 4-inch piece of gray granite cardstock. We will start by randomly stamping a variety of images from the Geared Up Garage stamp set across this piece of cardstock. So start by stamping the car image diagonally across the cardstock using black ink. Stamp the image that looks like an oil spill randomly across the paper using black ink. Next, ink up the gas can and randomly stamp it on the paper using the black ink. And finally, stamp the nut images on the paper using the black ink. Now let's create the layers. So for this card, I'm using the same sized rectangular stitched framelit die to create the 2 panels. So this is the smaller die that measures 1 3/4 by 3 1/4 inches. Simply lay the die cut on the left side of the gray paper with your stamped images and run it through your embossing machine. Now take out the rectangular shape, put the framelit die back on your paper, and cut the right side of the paper using that same rectangular die. Now cut the other 2 layers, which are the mats for the pattern paper. So for these projects, that means that you will cut 2 mats that measure approximately 2 1/4 by 3 1/2 inches. You will cut these rectangular shapes from a piece of black cardstock. So you will end up with 2 rectangular pieces of paper with your stamped images and 1 piece of cardstock that has 2 frames that are identical in size. You should also have 2 rectangular pieces of black cardstock and, of course, your black card base. Start by adhering the largest piece of paper to your card front. This is the one that has 2 rectangular openings in it. Next, adhere the 2 smaller rectangular shapes with the stamped images to the black pieces of cardstock. Adhere each of the matted pieces over the open rectangular shapes on your card front. Be sure to line up the stamped images on the rectangular pieces with the images on the card front before you adhere them. For the finishing touch, embellish the card with a little greeting. And that's it. Now you have 3 fun triple layered card designs that you can make with any stamp sets and supplies that you have on hand. You can use pattern paper or cardstock stamped with your favorite images to create the layers. The possibilities are endless, so have fun with it. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to download the printable tutorial. You can find the link in the description below this video. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by liking it and sharing it with your friends. And leave a comment below to let me know what you enjoyed most about the video and the project shared here today. Have fun getting creative, take care, and I'll see you soon.